Doesn't that look adorable? My goodness, Dimitri. Look at you, buddy,
And give her a big smile too.
with a Kool-Aid face. Teeth are so warm. You concerned over it?
Is it like an eczema rash or a rash?
Probably licking his lips.
Had a rain at one point, and then it says that after you did that, and then like every once in a while.
Okay. Are you ready to rock and roll, Laura? You ready to go?
No, it goes to something else.
All right, call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. We'll do a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Laura, can you ask Nathan if it's recording? Because I don't.
It did say it.
It's
Yeah,
set.
I heard it.
Did it? I did. Okay. I was just making sure. Is there anybody on? Because Heather should be on.
We don't have the screen that shows that. Oh.
Yeah, but I don't know if you remember that.
It was a long thing today.
I'm gonna agree to that. I had 2 surgeries add on and come off in the same day. It's like, what? For tomorrow.
Maybe with the doctor at 4. Couldn't get logged into that. So.
All right, so let's move on to the agenda. Approval of the agenda. We do need to add an item 5C regarding student representation at the board under new business.
Student what?
Student representation at the board. Oh, 5E.
B.
5E. Does anybody else have any adjustments to the agenda?
Mhm.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of 5E, student involvement with the board, as presented.
I'll second.
Yes.
Can we vote on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would just do it. Yeah.
Laura?
Let's take a vote. Jeff? Yes. Ross?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Everyone's familiar with that. Could we have a motion regarding it?
I'll make a motion. We approve the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion.
All right. Laura, could we have a vote, please?
Take a vote. Jamie?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Jeff? Yes. Ross?
Yes.
All right, next up, patron comments. Laura, are there any online that you can't
I
tell?
do not have any online. We do have one here in person. Jamie Park would like
You can come up to the desk and press the rectangular button to turn on the microphone. You have to
Gotta
hold
hold
it down until it turns green.
push
There
it
you go.
down till
Yeah,
the.
you're
there
good.
you go.
Go ahead.
All right. I would like to say that at first I had a problem with an email I received. I felt the content was conveyed in a manner that might be construed as hostile or harassing. I then attempted to navigate through the complaint process and found a myriad of areas that could be improved upon to enhance the communication process between staff and the administration when a complainant feels the school could do better or if they are not feel they are not being heard. My initial complaint has been resolved. There was a meeting with me that resulted in an apology and an appreciative growth mindset toward improving communication by and with staff. The policy KLAR was revisited in 2023, but has not seen a revision since 2017. And I feel there can be improvements that will make this process more navigable and accessible for people. Step 1, it states that you should talk to the employee. The policy does not say that I have to talk to the employee or else I can't move to step 2, but it was pointed out to me when I sent my complaint to the board that I had not started out at the lowest level, so this rendered my complaint as informal. I would like to point out this may not be feasible. If the employee has an unfair power advantage over the complainant, that can result in retaliation, that they can create a hostile work environment, or if complainant is reporting harassment of any kind. Step 2 and 3, they seem redundant at this juncture as they are the same person but have different actions and requirements for the complainant, which leads to confusion. In my complaint process, I sent a written signed email to the principal superintendent initially. Since I saw no reason in doing this twice, I then moved into step 4 when I was dissatisfied with the response. Step 4, I encountered much confusion at this point. When I felt the responding email did not address my concerns, I then sent a written signed email to the board chair. I was initially told that my email complaint was not a formal complaint because it was an email and not a hard copy using the form. I was then told my complaint also did not follow protocol and that I had not specified which policy was being violated. I was also told that my complaint did not follow protocol because I did not suggest solutions to resolving. I would like to point out that the policy says the attached form is not required to be used and does not stipulate that all items from the form be included in the written complaint to be valid and formal. It also states that it be a written signed complaint, but does not specify that that be a hard copy, and it does not declare that an email would not be acceptable as a formal complaint. I would also like to say it is not incumbent on me to find if a policy exists that is applicable to my complaint. That onus should apply to the board to decide if a policy is being violated, if an existing one needs modified, or if a new policy needs to be enacted. Finally, I would like to affirm that I did provide multiple suggestions on how to rectify my complaint. I would also like to address that there is no point of contact if the complainant is having trouble negotiating the policy. I had sent subsequent emails to the board chair after the above items were pointed out, nullifying my complaint about what I should do primarily in regards to the time constraints in the policy and how at this point we were past what was stipulated at each step. I was then notified that in order to be the most helpful to me, the board chair was ending our correspondence so she wouldn't have to recuse herself at a later date. I don't believe that my request for help in understanding the process would create a situation that demanded a recusal, but if that is the case, then who am I to inquire clarification?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if there are no more public comments, we'll move on to reports, and that is you.
Yes. I can't wait for you all to go out and see the new CTE building. It's spectacular. We're getting stuff cleaned up and put away. We're gonna do a grand opening of the CTE building sometime at the end of September, beginning of October, and invite the paper and the community and everybody to come out and look. It's spectacular. We have spent some money to do some new machines out there. We
Can
got
we just hold
tables.
on one sec? Sorry. Ms. Hart, I just want to say thank you for sharing, and I hope that we can find a way to help change things for the betterment of the staff and administration. I feel like perhaps we didn't acknowledge that well when
I
you
agree.
stopped. So I don't want you to feel like you weren't heard. And I know there's things around this that the board can do and can't do. But most importantly, thank you for sharing and helping us understand the situation.
Yeah, and I left printed copies for you guys if you'd like to read.
Sure, I would love that. And also, I just understand because of family and other things, I just want to make sure you were heard and that you have our acknowledgement.
Thank you, Ms. Hart.
Sorry,
Or-
Chris.
Any
I just-
kind of-
I was just feeling really awkward. Yes, I was just feeling really awkward in that moment as you were shuttling out the door. So,
I'm glad you said something because I was just like, oh, are we not gonna?
yeah.
I wasn't sure how it all worked.
Me either. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
So we're gonna put a grand opening out. Like I said, we'll get it out and everybody, they did a great job. SIA grant, we had enough money left over that actually Mr. Stevens and Mr. Lynch were able to purchase more materials for their projects in class. So Mr. Stevens purchased materials for welding and woodworking, including like tables and more like, just like I said, machines. And Mr. Lynch actually purchased a printer so we could start doing t-shirt pressing. And so our hope is that.
Like a
using-
screen printer?
Pardon?
A screen printer? Or- oh, nice.
It's really cool. So we're really hoping that we're gonna really create interest and really get these programs, these CTE programs going with the engaging projects and doing a lot of after school stuff, not only for junior high and high school, but for the elementary. And we purchased some robotic stuff. We were able to use YTP money to purchase more 3D printers And so they've actually got the 3D printers up and running and have been making like bolts and things like that. And so our goal is really to kind of get some of this going, and not only during the day for the junior high and high school, but really kind of getting some elementary stuff for after school. So we've actually had to do some transition for our SPED education program in Synergy, and I just want to thank Ms. Bozier and Roxy Seston. They spent probably combined 80 to 100 hours this summer converting all of our SPED and 504 files into this new system, and it was quite a feat, and we're still working on it. But I just appreciate all the work they're doing on that. And then for transportation and facilities updating, we got most of the summer projects we said we would get done. There was some hurdles we had to go over. In fact, the CTE building and the HVAC have and the power have been kind of the bane of our existence. As I said in my update to you all, we had to postpone a volleyball game. And it was not because we don't have the HVAC, is that when they started the power back up and all the machines up for our HVAC, everything worked except the gym one.
Oh.
And there's a hole in the coil. And so we are trying to get the coil to get a new one in, which was 4 to 6 weeks, which was about 2 weeks ago. But if that doesn't fix it, they will actually have to take the entire machine off and put a new one on. So we follow, and like I said in my update to you all, we follow the OSA recommendations. And the time that Mr. Harris and I looked at it, it actually said not to do any sports and unless you're inside an air conditioning.
Oh.
And so that's why we canceled, and we canceled pretty early in the morning, or we postponed pretty early in the morning because you have to do reps and all those things. So right now the HVAC, that's the only major problem. Otherwise it's like the Arctic in every other classroom. And then our maintenance department, I think I've said that, but I just wanted to reiterate, we're moving out of the transportation barn into the old CTE building, the shop. So then we'll be able to put all of our equipment in there. We have the new mower, we have the lift. We're putting everything in there, and then that'll help the transportation shop be organized and cleaner.
In what building?
The old CT shop building. So the front was like a classroom and the back was the shop.
Oh,
Back
but,
here, yeah.
okay.
So the front is the new art classroom, and the back is where our maintenance department will be and be able to house everything.
Because I had a garage door.
Yeah, it's got everything, so it's perfect. And then we're also working on finishing in the reports for transportation. We just found out today that our transportation department is going through its audit. And when I say it's audit, it like happens once every 10 years, and ours is up. So Roxy and Mr. Albers are working to get that going. And then one of the major things that I think is a struggle, no matter where you're at in Oregon, is transportation and getting bus drivers. And so right now, as you saw in the consent agenda, we actually had a bus driver resign. So we only currently have 2 regular bus drivers. We have a job posting out. We do have an interview tomorrow, but one of the things that we struggle with is how do we drive our regular routes and activities? And so we bought the Type 20 bus, which you all have to know. And we are going to require, and this will take a couple of years, that all of our coaches and some staff get their Type 20 license. So if we have teams that are less than 14, we don't have to try to rearrange routes and get subs, because we're struggling with that right now. The coaches can take their teams. So if we're going to play in Waldport, then the coach just takes the Waldport, rather than us trying to figure out how to get kids here, there, and everywhere. With Mr. Stevens, if he's going on a trip and he has less than 14, then we don't have to take a bus driver out. He can take that trip. And so I think for us having our coaches and some staff having that Type 20 license, I currently have one, I got trained for it. That's going to help alleviate a lot of our transportation issues. Because last year there were times where it was like, okay, we have 2 buses and 3 vans, go. And this way it will help us to say, you know, we already have a day where we're pretty sure we're not going to be able to let a field trip go, because we don't have enough bus drivers. Our Type 20 van is going on a trip already. So, and it's sad because the kids will, if we can't get it figured out, the kids are going to miss an opportunity. So I wanted to let the board know that that's something that we're moving towards more to help us make sure that we're not having to have kids miss opportunities.
So with that resignation, is that gonna impact the bus schedule immediately?
Our hope is not, they have something going. But if we can't get anybody hired, it possibly could. Like I said, they do have an interview tomorrow and it looks pretty promising. But so whoever's listening out there, which is just Nathan and Mrs. Shunk.
Not many people.
If you know of anybody who is looking for a job that has a CDL, who is interested in working for the school, we have great, I mean, truthfully, it's pretty good benefits, salary range, please send them our way, because we are struggling. And unfortunately for the state, for us, if you have a type 20 license, you cannot transport students from school to home and get it as a reimbursement. Am I correct on that, Dawn? You have to have a CDL license. So even if we were very much in, like, I could take kids, but my mileage we wouldn't get the 90% reimbursement. And so I'm working, a lot of rural districts are working with the state to say, you're gonna need to work with us a little bit, because, you know, that's a huge thing. So we are looking for bus drivers. So if anybody knows anybody, please send them our way.
Thank you. Doing the principal report also.
Always.
Are there opportunities for like subs, like if somebody's not interested in doing it all the time that has a license?
Yes, we are even looking for subs. Like right now, we have a couple subs. We have 2 subs actually. One is willing to do morning and one is willing to do afternoon. And so we're able to kind of cobble together a schedule for a couple weeks to help, but that's not gonna last forever. So.
Okay.
Right.
My K through 12 brick and mortar, our theme this year is pride. Every student got a pride, Alcee Wolverines pride shirt. So we're really working on what does that look like? Having pride means, you know, being respectful, responsible, and safe, keeping our hallways clean, using your lockers, coming to class on time, making sure that you're using appropriate language. And so we're really working on that thought process. And we're just kind of getting everything started. The one thing I do want to really highlight is that we are actually partnering with Central Lynn High School to provide an actual teacher. Now it's via Zoom for a Spanish 1 class. So Central Lynn has a teacher. They have like 7 kids in their class and we have 7. So Mr. Roz is actually facilitating it with there. And so our kids will now be able to take Spanish 1.
Perfect.
So our hope is that that we're using this kind of as a pilot year. And then our hope is that as we can see how this work, that maybe we're able then to, you know, partner with Central Lynn for more classes or even Harrisburg. And so I had one student come up to me yesterday, go, I don't really know Spanish. It's going to be kind of hard. And I said, well, that's why you take it. She's called Senora Guerrero. And I'm like, you know Spanish. Senora is Spanish. And she was like, well, we're going to have fun though. And so they're very excited. Like I said, we have 7 kids in there. So I wanted to highlight that because that's a huge thing for us.
Is it 1 or 2 year requirement to go to a 4-year?
It's a 2-year, but they will make exceptions if the high school doesn't offer it. And so some of
Okay.
our students have been able to take that exception, but I also think it's a good experience and a good enrichment class for our
Yeah.
students. And so I'm very excited there. It's a good group of kids who can be our guinea pigs. So, yep. And we will be paying for half that teacher salary for that class period. So that was one of the pieces that Central Lynn and us and I worked out, but I'm very excited to do it and just see how it goes.
And so next, the Learn at Home report. Heather, are you?
I missed this. Maybe, I guess I missed it. What the literacy thing with the Learn at Home. So it said that some of the people went to Portland. How did that Florida trip go?
We did not go to Florida. We went to
Oh.
Portland instead.
Oh, okay. Were we able to use the money we needed to use?
We
out
used
of
the
that
early
grant?
literacy and the reason is that the Anita Archer is one of the foremost experts in literacy. And so when that came up, it actually was a trained trainer.
Mhm.
So then the 4 staff members that sent can come back and do some training of our staff. And so it would be, I'll be honest with you, it pretty much cost the same as it was to go to Florida. But they spent the entire week in Portland with Anita Archer, and I kept getting selfies from them with Anita Archer from the staff that went up there that just loved it.
I think they signed in from dinner after that session. and one
Mrs.
of
Schultz
our-
did, yeah.
We did.
She's like,
Well,
sorry,
I-
I'm
Yeah.
walking down the
I-
road.
Yeah, that's dedication.
I think it's great. I voted against the Florida thing, so I was just curious in my memory here about how things went. So.
I mean, I'll add that the Florida thing was a great idea, but when Anita Archer put that out, we immediately, our focus went there because she, like, Krista mentioned, is just the expert worldwide. She goes all over the world. People traveled from all over the world to be at that training with us. Actually, we had people from different countries, so it was pretty special. Okay, so our report from Learn at Home, we are underway with the school year. I hope that you were able to see the sweet smiles with the students with their I Got This coloring page we sent out to all of the students along with their packages. And it's just one more way that I'm trying to thread that connection. And so we highlighted all of their little pictures at our assembly that we had last month, and they're all holding up the same I got this sign, like I got this year is gonna, this is gonna be a great year. So we're continuing to build that connection and that friendship, and that's our theme for the entire year is friendship. So we're working on that every single day. And then we have lots of families reaching out that they got together during the summer, which was really special. I included also words of encouragement that our families sent in, and as we're really building, continuing to build that parent partnership and bringing parents to the front. We are using Savvis K5 now, whereas last year it was just 4-5. So our teachers are training in that. And then also we have a great Nathan and I worked on making sure that it's Savvis is populating in our Canvas, which just is a seamless approach for our kiddos to just go one stop and they know where all of their lessons are and they can get in there. And then I can see what they're doing in every single class and parents are able to access it. So it's really great. We're continuing with Open Court foundational skills for our K3 group. And we had workbooks that went out with their package of supplies for that. And then we have iReady Math, which I spent the whole day because I went to both trainings, but our teachers were trained along with the brick and mortar teachers today in iReady, and it was an incredibly in-depth training. And we're really grateful to the trainers that came out and trained them. And then of course we have Wayfinder. I included, I'm collecting all of our quotes from parents that are sharing how deeply connected they feel to the school and how much they love that. And so we're putting that on our social media. So I invite you to join us on our social media pages if you haven't already and check that out. And then I included a staff photo into that board report as well. So, and we're wearing our Elsie shirts and we feel that pride just as much. We are feeling so much more connected to what goes on in the brick and mortar, and that collaboration and the teachers coming together is coming together really great. I want to add another role that I have is special programs director for the district. And part of that role is overseeing the ELD program, which supports our language learners. And we have several language learners in the school and then also online. So part of that process is identifying a curriculum that supports, and Sandra Pinion is our ELD teacher for the district. And so she will be utilizing, let me slow down. We are independently adopting Savvis and iReady that the district is already using. Both of these
are state approved. And so it just makes sense budget wise to dive into the resources that they already have for supporting our language learners. Both of these resources and these curriculums have a wide array of resources that Sandra can use with her students. So part of this process is for me to announce that we went through a process of identifying these 2 curriculums that we'll be using in the district and announcing it here for all of you. Do you have any questions? Okay, and this is perfect because it's already paid for. So I'm not asking for us to be purchasing any other curriculum. So we'll be utilizing.
And this has to be in the minutes because we have to send it to
Yes.
Bree. So Laura, please make sure you just put what she said.
I said way too much, I think, probably. So I apologize. Basically, Laura, we are adopting iReady and Sabis as our ELD curriculum, and we're already using that in classrooms. So students are accustomed to using it, and it's a consistent process for them. And that's what we're doing.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Shunk.
Thank you.
On the agenda, I have athletics activities, but is that
He's not here, but I'm gonna go through it and it didn't get put on. We'll make sure it gets put on next month. So ultimately, Mr. Harris, like I said, or like you all know, because you approved it, was hired as the VP-AD. So his job is really the day-to-day. He does all the disciplining of the students, and he's out in the hallways making sure they get from here to there to everywhere. So in the junior high, he wanted to let you all know that the hallways actually have really cleaned up. We gave all the kids lockers, 7 through 12, and there was a lot of grumbling at first, but now it's like old hat and it's great. We have a cell phone expectation that cell phones are not out during instructional time. We've set that expectation with both teachers, staff, and students. So their cell phones are either to be in their lockers or in their pouches, and that's just something that him and I are really going to focus on. I sent some articles to you a couple weeks ago about the movement of that, and I think conversations should be had about it. It'd be great to have a student representative on board to talk about what their thoughts are on that policy. But we are overall, one of the things I saw a lot last year was there was a lot of cell phones out all the time, and now I'm seeing this year not so much. Like, we teach bell to bell. That's what I've been telling my high school teachers, my junior high and high school teachers. We don't have time to just be like, yeah, we're going to take 10 minutes off. We teach bell to bell. So if you have time for your kids to get your cell phones out, their cell phones out, then you need to be putting more into your class periods. And we're not perfect, but we're getting there. And Mr. Harris has really led the charge on that. As you all know, we hosted the Jamboree on the 31st. It was a quick jump into the fire by Mr. Harris, but he did a great job. We actually had 8 football teams and 9 volleyball teams, and it was a fun day. At that time, before the football Jamboree started, we did hold a quick memorial for Ethan Cantrell, and it was great because all the teams were there, and we received flowers from different high schools throughout the state. I got tons of phone calls and emails from colleagues, and we actually received a bunch of cards as well. So we were very lucky to have that support for both our school and the Cantrell family. Middle school volleyball and football are going. We actually have 12 kids for football and 20 girls for volleyball.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So it's going really well. We're having 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. I believe we have we don't have 5th graders for football. We have a couple 5th graders for football, and we do have some 5th graders for volleyball, but they just keep coming. And I was like, great, that's how you build programs. So we're very excited for that. And then just at the end, I'm going to read this from Mr. Harris. On a personal note, I wanted to say how thankful I am to be back at LC School serving in my new role. Thank you to the board and the community for all your support and kind words. It really means a lot. I look forward to serving our school and students this year, and please don't hesitate to reach out to me with questions, concerns, or comments.
I've heard very positive feedback. So
Everybody loves Mr.
Yeah.
Harris.
I would also
was
say
excited.
that I was surprised, but not surprised. I know some of you spoke about the OSBA talking about cell phone policies. My favorite high school student told me it would never work, and I said, "Oh, yes, it will." So I'm glad that it is working. I think it's very important, and I think they're distracted enough already. So thank you for trying. I know it's a difficult task. It's a difficult task for parents at home. So I'm sure it's a difficult task here. So as my position on the board, I really admire the effort and hopefully it's very successful.
Yeah, I imagine it's difficult to thread that needle between getting the cell phones out of the classrooms and not making everybody angry about it.
Mhm.
Well, and we also have to keep in mind that some students, not necessarily many in this district, but I do know that some students have been trained to utilize them as a SPED aid and device for their success in special education. So I appreciate the perspective that we have, not strongly enforcing, but encouraging and leaving some room for those students to not feel left out.
Yeah, and it's one of those where, you know, we know that there will always be those exceptions, and so, but in general, you know, I think we're really trying to empower the staff
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
say, this is your classroom, these are our expectations, because we had a couple say, well, you know, we're not sure, and I'm like, do it. And if they say, no, we're not doing it, that's not a cell phone problem anymore, that's a defiance problem, and we are respectful here, and so we're really hoping that that we really understand that when we're at school, this is everybody's job, the students and the staff, and you need to focus on your job. And if you need, then you get 4 minutes in between to take your little break, and then you focus on your job for 53 minutes. And so
Right.
we're really pushing that. And like I said, Mr. Harris has taken the charge. That was the first thing when he got hired. He said, what are we going to do about cell phones? I'm like, well, what would you like to do? And so,
I like the perspective on that you just used with jobs. I was really impressed to see in one of the synopsis that came home, employability skills. I love that terminology and utilizing that, being on time, being on task, being respectful, all those things that you are employability skills. And so that was a great perspective to see too.
And I guess that's, next up is Mr. Staley with financial reports. Your microphone is already on.
so you don't have to worry.
I lucked out tonight.
Mr. Staley.
Don't need that. Statements are in front of you. The first one's for the year. The main item in this is to show you where the revenue is going to be with the attendance projected as of now. We budgeted it to 295 and it's only at 263. And if you went, I think the main thing is to go to the third page or page 6. And you'll see over there on the far right column, we budgeted 295 kids. And then there's other weightings in there which are defined on the far side, and I've gone over that before, but we have an ADM of 395 that we budgeted on. And we're only going, right now, it's only going to be 363. More than likely, the 363 is from the previous year. And due to the loss in student population, it will take the higher of the 2 years. And so 363 is going to be your number. And so we already know what our revenue is going to be for this year based on the state. And what does that reflect? That reflects two things. That reflects that we're going to lose money compared to budget. And it's in the statement, 325,000 I'm projecting right now. And it's also going to reflect how we budget next year, because now we're going to have another base. And so when we get down farther down the road in September, October, when we have everything in there, Chris and I are going to do a 2-year budget, how this is going to affect, because we have the contracts of the staff. So we know that we can project student numbers just based on what the grade level, and then we can bring that to the board and go over how that's going to impact before we develop the budget. So that's my goal, to do that in October and November. Other than that, we still have money in the local governmental pool because of the fund balance that we have before, and we're earning about 30,000 a month, 34, which is great. That helps out the district, but that's not gonna last for long. As we spend the money for the bonds and various things, that's gonna go down. Other than that, we have all the contracts out to all the staff. Their calendars are out to all the staff, all the extra duties calendars, contracts are out. They've signed all that, so those are already in the financial statements. We're finalizing, Krista and I are finalizing the SIA that ends on September 30th for the previous year. And I'll go over that when we do the resolution. There's there. Other than that, we're getting that all set up. Statements are very basic right now because as people are purchasing, but we have all the salary and benefits in there, and we've got OWEB reconciled. Open enrollment was done on September 6th. Everybody has selected their medical plans, and we've already computed that according to the contract. So that is done and done for the year. So I think salaries are done. And now we can start projecting where we're going to be by the end of the year and plan on that with grants and all that. Right now, the beginning fund balance that we brought forward is $6,689,000, and we budgeted $6,000,007. So right now, when we get the audit, that might be adjusted a little based on property tax reconciliations, but there we still have to balance the early literacy grant with staff. So that'll change the general fund a little as Krista does her budget for that. But other than that, the general fund is pretty well set, and staff know their budget. They ask, Heather asked for her budget, and Keenan follows his budget, so they have all the reports and they can know where they're at on that. If you went to page 7 and page 8, those are the grants as we know them now. And the balances are on the far right side where we are there. The main one was that we carried over $151,000 in the SIA, and that had to be spent by 9/30. And that we've done that with providing supplies and equipment in the new CTE and staffing costs. So then we'll hopefully have carryover the next year as we go through that. I don't know if you have any questions, if you had looked at it on there, but it's very preliminary. It's a lot of numbers, but it's giving you where we're at, and I think we're pretty well set on those. On page 8 is your debt service. We don't know anything about collections until the statements go out and people start paying, but we had a carryover of 26,000 compared to 22,000. So we're right in the ballpark there. And I know the levy amount is still going to be the same amount as it was the previous year per thousand. Page 10, your capital projects. That's the money that the board had moved into for specific projects, and we also budgeted $700,000 to move in there from the general fund. So that's something that Krista and you can discuss how to do that, because that's both in the general fund and in the capital projects as you look at the food service program and how you're going to do that building. The bond and the Awesome grant. Chris and I claimed the final dollars, except about 30,000 on Awesome out of that. So we sent that in today, 400,000 to get those monies. That was the completion of the HVAC and the electrical upgrade. So to get those dollars. Other than that, right now, talked to Chris this morning or today, and looking at his numbers, I show 113,000, but there's other change orders in there that have not been recorded, and he's looking at around 80,000 out of that amount. So we're someplace in between once we get everything paid. I wasn't going to go down each invoice on his compared to mine. I always look at this as the Bible because we pay the bills. So right now I'm saying he's he says 80 and I show this, but once we pay everything, we'll know exactly, but we're still in the good there. And that'll be the board's decision now to use those dollars. And then the SISIC rehabilitation grant, that's its own fund. And there's a few expenditures in there, and then we'll start claiming those dollars as we go on too. So we're at the beginning of the year, but I feel very comfortable where we're at. And I can always update, they'll be updated every month to show you where we're going to be at the end of the year and come back with a budget projection for the next 2 years so we can plan the budget. Any questions?
Oh, you're doing a great job. I love the way you lay this out. Thank you. Makes it easy
Well, I appreciate it.
for us,
Yeah. well,
not you, of
I think
course.
No, like I've always said, they're numbers, but they give you the ability to make decisions.
Mhm.
And so the superintendent knows where they're at, what it is.
Yep.
And the supervisors know what dollars they have. And,
Clear.
so you don't operate in the dark. You don't want to operate in the dark, and that's what happens to some school districts.
Well, that's why I said thank you
Yeah.
for the way you do it, because it makes
You're
it
welcome.
easier for us.
Yeah.
And clear and transparent
Yeah.
to the community. So thank you.
Thank you. Are the Giggies here?
They are not, so I'm just gonna go over quickly. They gave you the general overview. We're still, you can see numbers as you're walking through. There's like tape numbers on the walls. They're still doing some testing on seeing what kind of composition our walls are. And then for the seismic grants, and then our hope is after we get some of that data back, then they'll start making the design for it. They're putting in a second seismic grant here probably this spring. For the high school classroom wing. So it's out late this year, so December, I'm sorry. We've heard that the legislature might move up the seismic grant. Currently it's like 2.8. We've heard they're trying to move it up to like 3.1. Our hope is yes, that they do that. And then a conceptual design for the kitchen building. You can see at the end of this report that there's actually, we kind of got it settled. Based on what the design process is, they're estimating that the kitchen and cafeteria building will cost us about 2.5 million. And so have some feelers out with both Benton Community Foundation and the Ford Family Foundation to see if they can help us procure some grants. But we're also getting ready, the Benton County is also getting ready to submit the resiliency grant in the next month. And it would be, the partners would be Alcee, Philomath, and Monroe. We found a community-based organization to be the financial. And so we're gonna go for between 19 and 20 million, with Alcee being the highest at about 7.2 million of that. And so if we can get that grant, then the kitchen cafeteria building would actually come out of that grant. And so I was very happy. We had the first kitchen concept meeting, I think it was in August, and I felt really bad for them because I was throwing all these ideas out. And then they came back with this one that you can see at the end of Chris and Nancy's report. And it was pretty much everything I'd said and wanted. Thought that would fit our needs. And so, like I said, that we're going to still give a little, they're going to still refine it just a little bit, but it's about 2.5 million is where they're saying that building would cost us.
I thought they said that was gonna come under 2.
They did, but then there's some things like you have to have certain,
There's a swell requirement, there's a road requirement, there's a fire turnaround. There's things that the county on the last meeting put in that we have to do, and some of those are quite expensive. But I think the meeting went really well. Krista had to change the door location for the flow, which I think is ideal so the kids can queue in the building. It was a good discussion. I don't know if it'll end up costing 2.5, but
he
like,
thinks it's a little bit high. He thinks it'll be closer to like the 2.1 range.
Yeah.
But because like the current CTE building, so this one would be about 2,400. The CTE building was about 4,000 square feet, but this one is more because of the the oven, and so they're
Fire
in the
suppression.
freezer and
right, there's a lot of
So-
costs in there.
Is there a secondary plan to potentially tack on like shower stalls if we're going with resiliency?
It's gonna be more, so this one would be a standalone building, but it would be, the second part of the resiliency would be that we would remodel the play shed and add it to that.
Okay,
kind of between it.
so that is in the projection.
That is, we would still have that piece. But the play shed, when we talked about the resiliency, they said it would be really important to have a separate building. So if we had long-term, for
If you-
refugees, for lack of a better term, that they could be kind of isolated. And so that play shed would fit that bill, and we would add on to the play shed, but it would be very close to the kitchen, so then we wouldn't have all these pieces. So
Felt bad I didn't get to go because I was homesick.
I wondered, I was like, I'm sick.
I was
Personally,
really
I
sick,
think
24-hour flu
some-
bug.
thinking ahead, I think like my idea of like roll up doors so you can have indoor outdoor eating things we could add later
Yeah.
that they're trying to build in. But I think sometimes you have to look at if we nickel and dime it, we may really be stuck with it. But from my standpoint, I think Soderstrom, how do you say it?
Soderstrom.
Soderstrom, there you go. They're brilliant. I mean, they do a great job. So I think it'll be great.
Is there potential with that play shed also upgrading for a more substantial second gymnasium?
Probably not for the resiliency
Okay.
grant. I don't know. We're still kind of in the process of that. I mean, we might do some upgrade, but it wouldn't be like, here's like our little gym. It would be like very
Multi-purpose room.
more multi-purpose room. Yeah.
Questions on the projects? So next up is our enrollment, Laura.
It is
you-
what it is.
Oh.
There you go. I will tell you, in the brick and mortar, our downfall, I don't want to say downfall, but the lowest group is our K1s. And that, if that trend continues, that will be a problem for us. I don't know, I've asked around, and they said there's just not a lot of 5-year-olds. There's more kids in like the 2, 3, 4 range, so it might go up. You can see our biggest is actually sitting in the grades 4 through 7 or 4 through 8. But for us, that is concerning, the K1, because that right there is our future. And if we continue, and I'm going to be honest with you, I've spoken to some colleagues from the region, and they're all seeing some lower enrollments. But you know, we had some interdistrict transfers both in and out. Our hope is that we can continue to build our culture and our teaching strategies and our teaching capacity, that people will, you know, who perhaps go to Philomath will come back here. But there are some people, I'll be honest with you, if I had a kindergartner and I, you know, worked in Philomath, but I lived on the east side of Alsea, it would make sense to do some of that. Some of that's just a small school where you live. But our hope is that we can get those numbers up, because if not, we are going to have to look at blending classes, you know, a class of 5. And I'm just going to be straight honest, a class of 5 doesn't pay for the teacher.
Right.
And so,
That's the way it was originally when I came here 18 years ago.
yeah. And so,
It's not the ideal, but
At that
Oh, I thought you meant you went to
level.
school here 18 years ago. I was like, damn,
Yeah,
you
no,
went
I
into
know.
kindergarten late.
no, I'm young. What?
it's still, and I'll be honest with you, in looking at a K1 blend, and if you look at our numbers at 12, that's not a bad number even at that level. And so, you know, we need to bring people in, and I think that we also need to sell ourselves as a way of small school. But, you know, part of it also is that if our community wants to keep a community school open, then we as a community have to invest in our school. Because, you know, one of the pieces is we can put all the money in that CTE building, but that's for junior high and high school. And if we continue to have numbers like that, it doesn't matter if we have a CTE building in 5 to 10 years, we won't have the numbers to keep our doors open. So, you know, I think it's just really, it's one of those that, you know, we've thought about as a staff and as administration. We just have to keep improving our teaching strategies and improving the culture. I think some of it also is there's this reputation that we have to get rid of. So I think that's why celebrating things like the grand opening of the CTE building and having professional development and those types of things to bring people back to school is super important. And, you know,
Increasing our offerings as we grow programs will be a good plus too. So I love that you're focusing on items to push into the grade school level.
yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, we
it
are a
is
charter
what it is.
school. We can always pull kids in from further out, but I guess, you know, we're also an aging community. I mean, we see that, and there's not a lot of young people moving into LC having babies, except us old people who are trying to keep the population growing, but
Actually, there's a lot of younger
but
people
what I,
moving
well, I was
into
gonna
that.
say lately though, I've seen a shift. So hopefully, and if we can get some more housing, you know, you
Well,
never
the
know.
community action committee that's working with the county to maybe hopefully change some of that land
Yeah,
use
yeah.
and open up some more opportunity for the community. So hopefully.
Just keep getting your stories out there. Like I go all the time when I talk about, anytime I, with other people, whether they have kids in school or not, like talk about like kids' experience, everything that's going on at the school, and you just keep writing people until they bring their kids.
Is there any way to utilize that? I know probably not this year, but the CTE building to bring in money doing like older classes in the evening or on weekends?
We have to talk, we talked about it to do that. I don't know what it would look like. Mr. Stevens and I are talking about doing, but we would have to do it through a community college and
Okay.
I don't know what that looks like. But
Okay.
we kind of talked about doing that piece. I think,
Only because most of these kids are going to Albany to commute. I mean, like where my daughter couldn't
Uh-huh.
go to LBCC in Corvallis, she had to go all the way out to Albany, and it's a long way.
Yeah.
I mean, well, Albany, whatever.
well,
but
and I think, you know, that's the one thing is like bringing in dual credit so our students don't have to travel. There's a barrier. But I also think the big thing is it's easy for people to continue to talk about the negative. And so we need to turn
Right.
that
sure.
around, that it's not, you know, and that we're really about kids. And that it's not about what I think or what you think and how blah, 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 blah. It's what environment can we provide the kids? And I think that's how you're gonna see things go up, because when it becomes a lot about the adults, then people really start wondering, well, what is it for the kids? And
Mhm.
so I think doing those different pieces for elementary and high school, and if we can get, you know, some of the older population to do night classes, like a welding or a wood shop, that might open up. The hard part about small schools is that they're very generational. So if somebody didn't have a great experience when they went to school here, that's what they remember, and they don't want their kids to have that same experience. So I think it's really about opening our doors and having people come in to see that, you know, there is a culture shift in some capacity. So
Wish there was a way to get more jobs too, because that is a valid, if you're going over the hill anyway, kids are, I do that, it's nerve wracking at times, but.
and they also think that smaller doesn't mean more opportunities, and I disagree with that. I think opportunities are there, you just have to take them.
So
So
the smaller class sizes is a benefit.
well, and I
period.
see a lot of, well, I'm going to Philomath because there's more opportunities, and I literally just look and say, well, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And so, you know, so it is what it is. So we're just gonna keep plugging away. Like I said, it's easy to talk about the negative, and that seems to get out there more, but I think that we really need to focus on the good things we're doing.
I mean, you're slowly solving problems like we talked about last year with foreign language, right? And as we go and solve those problems, there's less reasons to leave and more reasons to stay.
Get
So,
more offerings, yeah.
Mm.
Keep doing a good job with social media too, because it's really easy to click and share those things.
We are, yep, Nicole Davis and I have been working together, and she's been doing a lot of the graphics. And you know, we just take pictures and post them.
Perfect.
Those kids that talk about different opportunities, but you know what? You'll be on the team. You don't have to try out.
Absolutely.
unless there's 20 kids playing volleyball.
When they told me 20, I was like, hold on, do we have 20 girls between those?
I was
grades?
like
And they
thinking
were
the
like,
same
pretty
thing.
much we got them all. And I was like, perfect.
So a true junior varsity program.
I believe so, yes. I mean, I
Awesome.
walked in there yesterday and I was like, geez, like they
That's
just kept
awesome.
coming.
That's awesome.
So, yep.
All right, so on to new business, grant resolutions. You again, Mr. Staley.
One thing
You turned your mic off.
It's on now. Yep. If you went to the second page, I guess, picture of where we are on the budget compared to the grants. And when we budgeted, we estimated and we got numbers from the ODE. And then when the actual grant comes in, I want to bring that to you to approve the grant and to change the appropriation so that our records tie to what the actual grant is. And then our budget is more accurate as we develop it for next year. You'll be getting these on a monthly basis as we get the grants, and we'll go over them, and Krista could add to it. But the grants I have here are the integrated guidance grants. We've got all the figures there now for those grants and what we adopted. And the main one here in 251, this SIA, or the Students Investment Account, we carried over 151,000 that has to be spent by September 30th. We were not planning on carrying that over, but due to various things, we had those dollars. The figure that we budgeted was 513, and that is really the number compared to what the 24-25 grant is. So the change in appropriations on that one is mainly on the carryover, because we were only about $7,000 off on comparing our actual to the adopted. High school success. I'm not sure why we were off on that one. We haven't figured that out with the ODE. I think Krista's been in communication with the ODE, and that all schools were off on that one. Is that not correct?
They had some issue with the biennium and the carryover, and we were actually down. So we were supposed to get 98,000, and they only appropriate or gave us 86. However, we have been told that the other money will be coming, which is,
Well, I'm holding my breath.
yeah, me too.
Going down the line again, you'll see we got the SERSA grant, which was more, and that's that's through the federal government, not through the ODE. And then we carried over the Title II and Title IV, and they've been expended in September already on curriculum. The early literacy grant, there's another one that went down. And Krista might want to go over that. We were thinking we're going to get about 84,000. We're only getting 59,000.
And that's completely off of ADMW of your K through 3.
So these all keep going down as your ADMW goes down. And then the ESSER, we budgeted high. We weren't sure where we had to have appropriations, and we only had 91,000, and I've collected all those dollars. So in this, the resolution is approving those grants that the district accepts them, and also modifies the resolution, the appropriation, so it matches to actually what we get. So then our operational and budget are all in sync. And so that is what the resolution is doing. Any questions on that? And I'll do this, we have a couple more grants that just come in. I'll bring them next month, so you'll see them every month.
Hopefully when the missing money shows up, we'll do it again.
Do we have to,
Hopefully, but
Do-
I'm not counting on it.
We've been told that it is, but they're still working out the kinks. So I'm not, yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I'm just gonna be positive.
after the election?
Oh, yeah, we're
it
gonna have
worked
positivity.
out?
There you
When
go.
it comes in, we'll do this
Not
again.
if, but when.
Just this process, as Krista writes a grant and is accepted, I will be bringing it to you, both as approving to go for that grant and gives the appropriations, gives the authority to spend.
Perfect.
So we need a motion to
Yeah,
approve this resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for the special revenue fund as written. Is that good?
It has to
Do
have the
Resolution
resolution of it.
2502.
Oh, where is
Yeah.
the 20?
Right.
Oh, I'm on the wrong page. There you go. Ah, there you go. 2502. Should I redo that? Are we good? I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2502, resolution to increase the special revenue appropriations for fiscal year 24-25.
I'll second.
Any discussion on that? It's very clear. Let's have a vote.
Okay, let's take a vote. Jamie,
Yes.
Soren,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Wes.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you, sir, for your hard work again.
He told me today, he's like, when I'm done, I'm leaving.
What did I say?
When I'm done, I'm leaving after the meeting. You have to stay longer than me.
I know, I-
Thanks, Don,
Right.
thanks.
All right,
Mhm.
next up
Hear
is, we're discussing the policy IICA regarding field trips and special events. Want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, you can, yes.
You want me to? or-
Yeah, no, you can. I'll let you.
There had been questions about having a policy regarding field trips and sports trips. And there were many questions about whether things should be put into policy places or not. And we thought we should have a discussion with the full board about this. And Krista was going to present what we have existing. We can discuss whether we need to move on with a revision of the policy or a new procedure, what that might look like.
What I'm gonna say before we start though, is I'm gonna caution the board very heavily to not write policies outside of OSBA. So I'm gonna just caution that because OSBA policies have been vetted to ensure that they're meeting all Oregon and federal law. So I'm just gonna throw that out there prior to this.
We should do an AR, right? For a procedure, not a policy.
No, I would even say as ARs to not write our own. Everything that we get should always come from OSBA.
So then why are we discussing this?
Well, there has been some questions about what a field trip packet looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So what I put in there is one that I actually brought into the district that fit the policy that we currently have. The one that we had last year, I'll be honest with you, and last year was a lot of just me kind of observing. I actually found very wholly inadequate. It did not have timelines. Like we were having people literally throwing stuff at us 3 days before and be like, I'm going. And it's like, no. So you can see, this is what I introduced this year. This is something that I created in my previous district. And then I looked at our policy and said, okay, well, we need to have things that have timelines. So this field trip packet is based on pretty much, you have a minimum of 14 days to turn it in. So we can ensure that the application form, so we know exactly what's happening, that there's permission slips, because what I noticed is our policy had a lot of, there has to be written permission slips, which was fine. I actually don't disagree with that because I've been bitten in the butt about not having it. And last year as I'm going, it's like, well, the parent called and said they could come. And so this one is very much you have to have a written permission slip with turned in. There have been questions about, well, what if a kid forgets it? Well, guess what? Kid forgets it. We are not going to have a kid leave this campus without written permission slips. Now for sports, we do have written permission because we do require a physical, we require other forms to be signed, including insurance, that we are able to have the mode of transportation, that has been requested 14 calendar days in advance, because last year we were worried about, there was a lot of, well, we need to get on field trips, but then, well, we'll do the field trip, but then we have to figure out going home, so on and so forth. So this pretty much lays out exactly what our policy currently says. The one thing I did put that was not on our permission slips prior was medical information, because as you know, when we take kids off, when kids are in our, I don't want to call it possession because that sounds horrible, in our custody, that also sounds bad. But when they're in custody, we're in parentis loco. And so therefore, if something happens, we need to be able to take them to the emergency room and have that medical information. So that was added to the permission slip. There were questions about, in general, like what is our procedures? This pretty much fits our procedures or our policy. This is just a procedure that I put up because I did find that a lot of these things were wholly, or the previous one did not have a very great packet. When we talk about sports, do we have sports do a packet like this? No, but our coaches should be trained on what is appropriate, not appropriate, especially if we do overnight trips. I do think in some aspects, there has to be expectations set forth. And that my expectation is as not the superintendent, my expectation as the principal, if there's an issue that I am immediately called to discuss by my athletic director. And so if there's an issue on an away trip that I would know. That is me as the principal. And that's really where it should go. And then if there's an issue that the principal can't figure out, then it goes to the superintendent. And so I would also like to know as a superintendent, so I kind of get the double-ish, but there were questions about this particular piece. We did call OSBA when this first came up. There actually is not an updated AR to this. They in fact do not have an AR anymore. The AR that we'd seen before, one district that had it was Corvallis, and I believe their AR was from 06. Does that sounds about right? But really, like I said, I wanted to show you all this so we know. I know, I will be honest with you as the principal, I know every single field trip that leaves here. And if there's an issue that we need to talk about, I'm the final approval on anything. So I just wanted to show this for the board so you can see what we put into place.
So for the record, we've had detailed conversations about this, and I appreciate the perspective. And I know I was the one that brought this up. I still think it may be lacking a little bit in overnight trip expectations and safety and security for those types of trips, that I think we might want to just make sure that our policy protects the interest of our students as well as our staff, and they're not being put in situations that aren't necessarily appropriate. I know, again, it's trust and understanding new expectations and new culture. And so I do want to give that opportunity. I just think it would be an opportunity for us to just revisit and make sure that that lens is looked at.
I think when you look at this policy, it's paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Says the administrator will develop rules to ensure that both students and adult supervisors are acquainted with the standards for conduct while representing the district. Such rules will be reinforced district policy in areas such as alcohol and tobacco and unlawful drug use. Procedures to be used in just in case of illness or accident, and methods for communicating with administrator, parents, and discipline in emergency situations. You know, I'd go back to, we do have the athletic policy, and we do have the student handbook, conduct handbook, in addition to that the staff is required, both coaches and staff are required to do training. So our staff does trainings on sexual harassment and boundaries. And our coaches are also required to do through OSA, those pieces. And so we can look, I think, you know, Jamie, what you're looking for maybe lies right in that paragraph. That would be then, how do you do the training? And so what training is ensured to do that? Because I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think that if we make policies very specific, then we start painting ourselves into corners.
Yeah, and I understood that perspective. I just, again, having seen situations in the past where policy and procedure weren't necessarily followed adequately and was misused by administration, was discouraging. So again, I want to make sure that our students are protected as well as our staff in the policy.
I mean,
Again, I understand it's trust in new leadership, but I didn't want to go without addressing my concern.
I guess, like, as a parent and a school board member, I think some clarity with especially overnight trips, because there's so much confusion out there about gender and how that's treated. I mean, as a parent, I would like to know if my biologic daughter is spending the night with a boy who thinks he's a daughter or girl or says he is. Like, I mean, I think we may need more clarification for today's time period that hasn't been around 5-10 years ago. And or how that's treated by staff, right? Like, what are kids allowed to share and not share based on gender preference or pronouns, sexual identity versus biologic identity. I mean, these things have bitten other school districts really hard. And I think it isn't necessarily bad to have that conversation deeper. I haven't really been privy to this. I always understand your, like, you're thinking about something, you don't say it. I haven't had any history in this area at this school or any other school. I don't think my kids have ever went, except for outdoor school, on an overnight field trip. But I think I'm following where you're at. And so I would just say, as another board member, I do believe that there may need to be some more black and white definition of,
Well, except for like
The
Krista said,
rules.
you throw too many words out there and you're painting yourself in a corner.
I know, but if you're too
So-
ambiguous, then things happen and you say, well, we didn't have a rule exactly for that.
Well, I can frankly state that policy was broken and,
So that's a whole different situation. That's,
right, but it was never addressed. And so,
so again, that's a whole nother situation.
yeah,
Well, and I also, Russ, I also want to caution you that if we start as a district saying, well, we have a transgendered student and this is how we address it, that actually violates FERPA and can put the district in a huge.
No, I don't, listen, I'm not saying it has to be addressed as that. I'm just saying that I think as a parent, for example, a child goes to outdoor school, but I don't know who their bunkmate is until they go. They arrive,
Mhm.
right? As a parent, maybe I would like that information before they go. I don't know who's in
Don't
their
know if they
cabin.
can.
Well,
Like information.
they're all in
like-
the same school.
Like,
Like,
well,
what I mean is,
Yeah, can you, I guess, yeah, like, do you mean like, oh, we're staying with like us in an elementary school from Lebanon? Is that kind of what you're saying?
well, maybe that, and also like, I would like as a parent to know that if my 12-year-old child is bunking with someone that is considered the same sex but isn't, I don't really care politically correct or not. I think as a parent of a 12-year-old child, I have that right to know.
Unfortunately, what I'll be honest with you is that that is actually a FERPA violation. If we were like, hey, we have a transgender, they do have policies in place where, like, for example, there was a student, I don't know what school it was, that a parent was concerned about a medical issue and they worked on that. And so they are able to do some of those policies. And I'm going to go back to, there was an issue in outdoor school a couple of years ago, and it was from Central Oregon, where a school district actually pulled their students out because one of their counselors, when they got there, was found to be transgender. And what I would say would be is that is a school district decision, but unfortunately, like, we can't say your child, we just can't. It's against Title IX, and it would be considered, it's just considered a violation of FERPA, just like we can't tell if a student is on an IEP or not.
Well, the FERPA, be it what it may, I should have a right as a parent to determine whether my daughter is sleeping with a counselor who's a man who claims to be a woman, transgender. And if I don't have that, then it needs to be clearly communicated that we're not going to tell you that. So then the parent has a right to not let their kid go on that. Because that, if that's not communicated, it's expected. By my generation, it's expected that my biological daughter would have a biologic woman as her cabin, you know, whatever it is, chaperone.
And I don't disagree. I think the issue came is that they weren't told prior, but legally you can't do that.
Right.
And so
Well,
when they
yeah.
got there, the school district made the decision. And it was all over the news. It was a couple years ago, but
I remember the situation.
you know what I'm talking about. I just, like I said, I think this is one where we could have that conversation. I would just really caution the board is, as we're looking at policies, to be super careful that we're not adding in, because we do have an anti-harassment policy, and that this says, and it specifically says race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and gender identity, because that is a Title IX issue. So I'm just throwing that out there just so
I
you-
get it. I get it.
So
But
what
So
you
my
have to do
concern
is
here-
trust your child. If they're not comfortable, to call you and you remove them.
or we, you know.
how.
well, my
however,
particular
I-
child didn't even have a cell phone. So
I-
like,
But they have a phone.
all I'm saying is
Yeah.
gender identity is a new term that isn't even in the Webster's 10 years ago, right? Gender is, but not gender identity. I ran for this board because of my personal reasons of supporting schools in educating our children, not transforming their minds into believing things that are untrue. So I'm just going to say, at an age where I have a high school student, I might trust them more to call me if they're in a situation. But if I have an elementary school student, I don't know that they're mentally developed enough to even be aware that that cabin chaperone is of the other gender. And
However,
in the liability of the school district, if something happens that is considered inappropriate, like just indecent exposure of someone of the same opposite sex, whatever they want to say they are, that liability falls on us. And we're the ones that are going to get sued by the family.
and as we've learned, it's our role as a board member to follow law and
policy.
create policy around state laws and
Yeah.
not our personal beliefs. So we have to walk a fine line.
Well, the
with
state
that.
law still protects the children.
But
As a
I
parent,
think-
you can do something different
mhm,
than you can as a board member.
yeah, and I'm hearing it sounds like we have some really good opportunity for some valid discussion. I mean, my concern was there were board members with students involved in activities where these policies were broken and nothing was done. So again, my
Sure.
concern, I want to look at everything, have the discussions, find out where any potential pitfalls are without painting ourselves into a corner, because that's the last thing we want to do. And trusting our superintendent that she's created a culture in our district to have teachers that aren't going to put our students in those positions.
And
So-
one, yeah, and one of the things too that I do also want to remind the board is when we talk about personnel issues too, that really is not a board unless we
Right.
go through that big piece. And so, I just think one, it's a culture. Two, we need to really make sure that people understand their boundaries. There are situations where I look on the outside and I read about them, like, I would never do it that way, because truthfully, I don't disagree with you, Russ. I think we need to make it a positive and make it so that kids are in a position and where however they feel safe, and that parents trust us to take them to an environment.
I
But
think it just needs to be, whatever we do, we just need to be very clear with the parents of the children in the school, what the school's position is. And that we can't say this or that, so they know that they can make an informed decision. Because, we just live in a different time, and not every parent is comfortable with what other parents are comfortable with.
would agree.
And so for me personally, if I were in that situation, board member or parent, and my child was put in a situation, I would be really upset. So then I think because I had no idea, right? I don't know. And I had a kid go to outdoor school last year. Another one this year or next year,
I
whenever.
was
But
like, hold on, how old is she?
the point is like, we just need to have very clear outline details to the families when they sign those permission slips that, hey, we're telling you we're taking your child, and maybe you can't write it. We can't guarantee that they're going to have a biologic same-sex cabin person, but we should have a way of sharing that before it's there. And then the child may feel so uncomfortable they don't say anything, but it can still harm them, right? Not even if that person doesn't harm them.
More
but
than
the
likely,
experience.
they wouldn't know until they were there.
Right, but that's what I mean.
So-
And so, well, the whole thing is just cattywampus, in
It
my
is.
opinion.
And one thing I learned actually watching Amy do her safe schools training is that even if you have, the same biologic sex supervising the kids, things can still happen.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm not saying they don't, but hopefully the exposure of a body part that isn't the same as the child in the cabin isn't happening, right?
However, Krista pointed out, across the country, there are women coaching men's teams. There are men
Well,
coaching
yeah,
women's teams. So
But they're
you
adults.
have-
Well,
Not
even if you're
always,
coaching,
no.
yeah, but even if
No.
you're coaching, if I'm coaching the girls
have to
volleyball
get
team,
that.
which I could, because I
Uh-huh.
played competitive volleyball, I'm not going to go into the girls' locker room while they're changing or showering as the coach and be like, oh yeah, I'm here to coach you, right? That's inappropriate and
And
entirely,
that comes down to
Right.
culture and ethics and
well, it comes down to the
I think
law.
we're getting into the
Yeah.
weeds.
No, but
Yeah.
it comes, the
I think we
law
need to
is
get
the
back to
law.
our
That's fine. We can get back to it, but the law is the law. As me, because I claim to be a heterosexual male, if I went in the locker room, I could go to jail. But if I claimed I was a woman, even though I'm a man, I could go in the locker room and not go to jail. There's a big difference there, right? But not a big difference to the girls, it's just a big difference to the person claiming to be in charge.
Krista, I'm wondering about the scope of the training that you mentioned for all the coaches.
Mhm.
Is that
Well, they
something we
have-
could review or?
Well,
As a
the scope is an OSAA mandatory. And what I would say would be is, when we talk about the counselors, often they're high school kids. And I don't disagree with you, Soren. I would hope though, and I think, being a high school coach, I know that and this is just in, or, Russ, this is just not 100% of the time, is that usually they have individual bathrooms. They don't do those showers. And we did the outdoor school, they actually have individual bathrooms. So those kids were in there changing. In fact, one of them actually told me that one of them would actually go in and shower in her bathing suit and change in there. So, I think it also, we look at the different pieces, and things can happen regardless if you're male or female, and regardless if I'm coaching, if I'm a woman coaching a female sport. When, I coached high school girls volleyball and high school girls basketball, and I was not I went in the locker room if needed, but as soon as they changed, I left. And I think that's for the comfort of them, but also for the comfort of the adults.
Again, it just comes down to like communication. So expectations are set. I mean, I don't think bad comes in all forms. I mean,
Sure does.
doesn't matter. Gender doesn't create bad, right? Bad comes in all forms, but we're always on this high level of preventing bad from happening. And so if you say that, oh, by the way, we're going to this outdoor school, but there's private bathrooms and showers, it eliminates a lot of risk for a lot of parents, whether it's gender, it doesn't matter at that point, right? So I don't know. I agree though, that I think this is a more sensitive issue than people want to pretend it is. Because the liability's there, Krista, like when it happens, it's too late then, because the school will be liable, right? Whether it's the same gender, different gender, whatever it is. So I guess we just need to make sure that the parents are aware.
Whether it's written into policy or not.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
total regardless.
You mentioned athletic policy. My understanding was that was one that hadn't been updated recently.
Joe is gonna look at it. We just didn't have time to do it, but we're gonna look at it. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I've had issues, I've had incidences where I've been called in the middle of the night and the student's been caught with weed, and guess what? Their parents are picking them up the next morning because they're not riding on our bus. And so those are just pieces where I think, we look at our policies. We look at, my coaches in my 80s know that I don't want surprises. And so if there's an issue, I want to know about it. And I think, that is, I think should be an expectation of the board of their superintendent, and that should be an expectation of the superintendent of the administration, is that we are following policies. And if policies are not followed, our expectations are not followed, then there's conversations around those. And if there's discipline, there's discipline. And if not, we always look at every situation. Like, for example, when Russ told me that, he saw 2 students that ran out between the buses, I immediately sent an email to my staff and Joe and said, hey, I got this concern. We need to be out there tomorrow to see what we can do to make that situation better. And I think that's the same thing. Are we always going to make everything better? No, I don't think it always happens, but I think that we look at it, and I don't disagree, there's liability, but there's liability even if I take the kids to the aquarium.
Well, as far as like the athletic standpoint, you have a student code of conduct. My kids have been athletes here for quite some time, and there's never been an athletic code of conduct presented. And it's really hard to hold a youth accountable to expectations if they don't know the rules.
Well, and
that's a technicality,
Yeah.
but I know it's one that's been used.
But I also
and-
think too, our handbook follows that expectation as well.
Yeah.
And so,
I agree,
Well,
but it
and-
would be beneficial to have an athletic, because we should, as a district, expect a little bit higher caliber of behavior from an athlete who is leaving our district and representing our school. So
I have to say, I kind of disagree with that statement, because all the years my boys played sports, every single year we had a parent meeting, and those code of conducts were absolutely at those meetings.
we absolutely have not received an athletic code of conduct since Peyton joined the school.
So
It's
last year
changed a little.
Noah was 19. So he had them every year.
Yeah.
And Cody had them before that, and he
It used to be
graduated
standard. I was an
15,
athlete
14.
myself.
Yeah.
But Peyton
The
came his
coaches
freshman
gave 'em.
year, and we've never received an athletic code of conduct.
Well, my boys always did all the years, and Noah went K through 12 the whole time.
Did you get one from Mickey?
We did have a meeting.
We had a parent meeting, but we've never received a school code of conduct for athletes that lists, if you do this, if you do this, if your grades are this. if your
Seemed to
grades are
me,
that.
yes, but no, it seemed to me we did have that.
So I think, that's the thing then that I think we're gonna go to get into the weeds. I'll talk with Joe about that. But I think, even if we don't have an athletic, we do have a student code of conduct and, there are expectations about how we act. And so I'll talk to Joe about that.
Okay,
All right.
Moving on.
I wasn't supposed to talk. I'm sorry.
Tonight, I'm going to ask you guys to be nominated for the OSBA Legislative Policy Committee. At the last OSBA conference, at the regional roundtable, they mentioned that the person from this region who was on the Legislative Policy Committee had to step down because she was becoming a state legislator. And they went around the room and asked everybody, can you please do this?
And Soren was like, yes.
No, well, everybody's like, no. So I actually went home and thought about it. I talked to my family and I said, okay, I could probably do this. And it's a position where when the OSBA takes a position on pending legislation or legislation that's being talked about, the policy committee goes out and educates people about it, including like legislators and officials. You go and you talk to them and tell them like why school boards want you to vote this way on that sort of thing. Talk to people in the community and tell them why school boards think that this is the way it needs to be. And so, and that to be nominated to that position, it requires the board to nominate me to OSBA. And so tonight I'm asking you guys to nominate me.
so we have to make a motion to
Yep.
nominate
Yep.
you?
And we have to put it in the minutes.
So I'm happy to nominate you, Soren, for Legislation Policy Committee. I'll make the motion.
A second.
Do you have any discussion or comments?
Nope.
Okay, let's take a vote. Russ,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Soren,
Yes.
Jamie.
Yes.
Soren can vote for himself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
have to.
you should vote for yourself.
Soren can vote for
He should
himself.
have been last.
You
Anyway,
said no,
motion carries 4-0.
No,
After the
Soren.
agenda came out, I
Soren, would
changed
you
my
like,
mind.
no.
No, forget it.
We already had Soren vote abstain, so.
Next up, school calendar revision.
Okay, so I just wanted to bring this to you. I pretty much explained it at the beginning. When we redid, or in the board recommendation form, when we did the calendar in our CBA, it only said that we weren't able to use 2 evening parent teacher conference evenings. And so therefore it means you'd have to go Thursday and then teachers would come back Friday. The union said, the teachers union was like, oh no, we'd like to do 4. So what I'm asking is, one, that we change that our school conferences in November and April are Wednesday and Thursday instead of Thursday and Friday. And I'll be honest with you, on Friday, we had very few parents show up, so I felt like it was not utilized for my staff. The second one is I would like to ask the board if we could do a half day on October 17th to do a violent incident staff safety training. We were supposed to do it on August 21st. However, we were brought with the news that Ethan Cantrell had passed away. So I chose to cancel that day, just out of respect for his family, but also for the staff. And so what I am asking is that the board allow for October 17th to be a half day. So we would release students at, I believe it was 1 o'clock, it'd be 12:45 or 1, so that staff could do that violent incident safety training that afternoon. So those are the 2 changes that I would ask for.
Okay. I'll make a motion to accept the changes to the school calendar.
I'll second that motion.
We have a vote.
Take a vote. Jamie,
Yes.
Soren,
Yes.
Yes.
Russ.
Yes.
Motion carried 4-0.
Then the next item we added at the beginning, 5E, student representation to the board. Jamie, are you?
Yeah,
on
I'll go
this?
ahead and take it. So Krista put out an email to the high school students. I believe you said sophomore and above. Is that accurate?
Yep.
It looks like we received 5 responses from students interested in participating with the board. We each have
I
a
didn't get
packet.
that.
After receiving the interest, Krista did, I believe, reach back out and request them to send in a little bit of a, why do you want to join our board? So that might help us make our decisions on who that representative is, excuse me. I think I'd like to open up for some discussion on that.
Well, I mean, we're just getting it today. So I personally would like a little time just to read this. But I think it's a great idea. I think maybe, like a chair and a vice chair kind of, so that if one can't make it, the other can.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it just one or is it two? Or is
Well,
it?
those are
Well,
details
that's
that we
kind of
would
what
have
we're
to,
discussing.
we would have to iron out the details of what's their role gonna be. Are they gonna be like non-voting members of the board, or they just?
They can't be voting members. They
Right.
have to be non-voting.
Yeah.
Non-voting members, or they could be. just
We'd be
come
in
and give a
trouble for that.
report, or-
Well, one thing I would say, and I'll be honest with you, I think we got six candidates. It may not hurt to have, just to start off this year, maybe have a meeting with them and talk about what the expectations would be this year.
Mhm.
Because one of the things that I think they need to learn is that the board doesn't hear like, oh, I hate our lunches. This is more of having a conversation about the cell phone policy or
Right.
talking about, like things like that. So I think that we would have to have some training, but I think there are actually 6 very great candidates. In fact, most of them are like, okay, can I have Mr. Harris read for me and see what he thinks? And so there was some very thought out on it. So it might be one where maybe we could offer it to each of them, and each of them gets a month, that you have a training about what to look for and how they can come, and then they could sit through a meeting, and then maybe next year do more of the sitting and having those conversations about a cell phone policy or.
I have a comment here from Racine. That was her input on this discussion. It says, I'm excited to see how many students have applied to be a part of our school board. As we start out down this road, I would like to consider allowing each of these students to be a part of the process. Having one person present each month, their collective thoughts would be outstanding and gives all of those interested an opportunity to engage with us. I think it is beneficial for the students to understand our role versus their school leader's role and how our roles differ to impact their students. As we move forward into next year, I think it would be great to hold a work session with all the students and to hear their thoughts on how best to bring student representatives onto the board. Thank you to each of our students that have shown interest. I hope we can find a way to include all of them. And that's
Well,
my sentiments exactly.
I mean, yeah, I think that's good. I also think though that like a brief 1-month thing isn't a ton. I mean, if you have 6 interested kids and we meet with them, I think it's great. I think Krista, you're right. We should, or whoever said we should probably meet with them and kind of share expectations and then see who's really interested. Because I think, I know it's a small school, but understanding how things work and function as a board or working on a board, working with a board is very important in life skills. And so I never imagined in my entire life I would run for the school board ever, right? Didn't think I'd be on the board of managing a nonprofit. I didn't think a lot of things. Because if we have enough students, this group, we might be able to make a pseudo board with them. Where the upperclassmen can be like chair and co-chair, and I don't know how they race. I don't know these kids that well, and they may want to have a little board that functions as a board for the school as they go through the year, because they don't have to do it all up front. But let's just imagine the next couple of months are just learning, but then in the beginning of the new year they have like an opportunity to approach the board as the student board, something like that, where they learn more of governance and how things work and how to speak for the student body. Like, again, this doesn't all have to happen this year, but I think, we were concerned about who would be interested. If you have a number of kids interested, I sure wouldn't want to like alienate them and discourage them. It's not really competitive as much as it's an opportunity to learn and see how things work.
I personally would like to invite them, discuss, what we do with them, is have like a work session and just kind of go through the rules and regs with us and just, start sitting in and giving us feedback, what they hear and what they think. And us the same.
Mhm.
Yeah, incidentally, when Christine called me this morning, and said she wouldn't be here, and she said, oh, you're gonna have to add this agenda item about student representation, and she just talked about it a little bit, said we have these. At the time, there was only 5 kids, and I was like, well, my first thought is like, we need to have a work session where all of them come in and we sit down and
Yeah.
discuss what they
Mhm.
expect, what
Their
we
role.
expect.
Yeah.
We'll see who shows up to that, and then that'll thin it out. Maybe they all show up. I don't know, but I think you're right. I think that'd be a good starting point. But I think as a board, we have to decide what we want to do at that work session. It can't be just off the cuff. We have to
Yeah.
have like someone has to come up with a little like curriculum or a little overview of. Jamie, you've been driving this hot and heavy. That's
Yeah.
something you could totally do.
I would like to reach out to a couple of contacts through OSBA
Mm-hmm.
that have presented this at the conferences and see if that's something that they can help us facilitate or give us some direction.
I think do
But-
that.
Do they have rules
then-
maybe?
We'll do that
Black
and
and white?
communicate
There's-
through Laura to email us with kind of your findings and what you would hope to do before the next meeting. I mean, that would be my hope. And then we can, because I know we can't all communicate at the same time, but if you can do that, I mean, is that
So
okay?
we can have a work. We can have a
Yeah,
work session.
because we can set up a work session, but I don't want to go into a work session to figure it out because it's just a lot of time. And we're all busy. I'd like to go into the work session kind of with you, putting out a
With the
plan
knowledge.
that then we can come and say, yeah, let's have the work session. Let's do this.
And Jamie
We
does
trust
all
you. I
the
mean, I totally
legwork,
trust
and we have
you.
a work session, we're like, yep, good job.
Well, because ideally for me, if we can communicate through Laura to do the work session with the kids right away, instead of us having
Or
a
through
workshop.
Krista.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what I mean. Instead of us having a work session and then them having a work, it's just a lot of
So-
extra meetings.
I know it's already kind of difficult because I've had the same conversation, multiple emails with Vince trying to
Mhm.
figure out how we can do a session to educate our community on how the board works.
Right.
And
right.
how the community can work with the board, and there's really nothing designed. But I know there's some specific contacts that are on that are a part of OSBA that are also on, I'm thinking of one person in particular who is also a school board member for a district that may be able to provide a little bit more direction as far as this goes. But every single one does things a little bit different. And I like Krista's perspective of we need to explain to them that we're policy, not a complaint, that they can't come here just to complain about how things are going. But just kind of doing a student body report.
And maybe that's where
Introduction
maybe we
to-
start that off and then,
Okay.
next year it's like, hey, we want somebody to come to every meetings. This is kind of that piece. I know Lebanon actually just started this. Because when I reached out to their superintendent, they actually had an application process, but they did it in the spring. And then that student representative started in August. So that, I think that the big thing would be is that you guys need to decide now is, do we want to have a work session and then you pick one to sit? Or do you just say, hey, we want to hear kind of what's happening in school and maybe your perspective on like, what do you think a cell phone policy would look like? And maybe the kids could go, blah, this is what we're seeing in school with the cell phone, giving them very direct, like, what is the cell phone? Because like I said, that's a huge thing that's popping up. Or what is the, I don't know, you could give them very specific, and then once you kind of play around with it this year and decide what you want, maybe go through an application process in the spring.
I
Well, are
think
there
that-
other schools that are doing this?
Mhm.
Lebanon,
That we
Lots of
can-
other schools.
That we can
However-
maybe mimic some of their ideas?
They've taken it to the degree of an application process and a true formal seat. They also have student bodies or ASB, government, student government. That's what I was looking for. So I'm a proponent of inviting each of them in each month and having them rotate, getting a feel, showing them that their voices are heard, explaining to them how we work, and then going into an application process and actually creating that seat at the table. That we select a person to come each month and make it become an annual or
like a monthly thing. Well, and the thing too is there's other schools, like for example, Lebanon, or actually I'm gonna use Portland Public. They do have a student representative that goes through the agenda, and when they have discussions, they actually give their opinion on new business and old business. But there's also schools that just have somebody sit there that they actually give a student report. This week, is Spirit Week. And so it really is gonna depend, because if you're gonna ask a kid to really sit here and have opinions over your agenda, you're gonna expect them just to do what you guys do. They have to come prepared. They have to
Right.
read, they have to understand. I'm not sure if we're at that point yet,
Right.
but it might be nice to have a
I
kid come
think-
and say, hey, this is what we're doing as a student body.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a large student body and we don't have student government, I think in my mind, how I would see this is like maybe this year, of course, it's a little different, but quarterly, maybe the representative could come. That would give us, I mean, they could come one a month to see the meeting, or they could come every meeting because they're public. My point is, I think helping students understand how the function of a board works. My idea would be for them to form their own organization, their own board that has a representative that comes to the meeting and then participates in the meeting if we're not going to nominate someone to be in a meeting chair. Because that way they work and function together, whoever they are, if it's 6, 5, 4, 3, whatever it is, on a monthly basis, and then report to the board, let's say this year on a quarterly basis or a bi-monthly basis, while they learn and grow into their position. And then hopefully then the following year, maybe they have someone in that position, but that group still functions because one person, I mean, you're really not going to impact the school body at all with one person. Even if they show up at one meeting. I mean, I know this is asking a lot, but I think sometimes, like I'm looking at these, most of them seem to be like right on spot with why they would want to participate. I mean, it doesn't say a lot, but I would imagine sitting down with a few of them, especially.
Don't say the name.
No. I just mean a few of them that probably have a lot of ideas of what this looks like to them. So I think we need to understand what they think this looks like as well as what we think it looks like before we do anything of consequence. And then, but my envisionment, I know you disagree somewhat because I know I always get a little bit of pushback, but we have to educate our kids on what it's like to grow up and vote in elections and understand policies and understand legislative procedures. Because the missing link with my kids alone that are adults now is they have no idea how this works. I've failed them, right? They just think, well, I don't know. I just vote for the person I like their name or whatever elephant or donkey's on the end of their name. But that's not really what we want. We want our kids to understand the legislative responsibility.
We have
Well-
a unique opportunity in this selection alone. Is basically creating the start.
Or their own board.
Well,
Right.
we're
Well,
making it
6
start
of
as
them here,
student
so-
government, because you have a couple of youth who graduate this year, but other than that, every single class other than freshman class, which wasn't even
Is represented.
solicited, is represented.
Yeah.
So
And that's
this
like-
is the start.
Also,
of
these
that
kids,
foundation.
some of these kids that want to go somewhere in life look for this for their resume to go to college, like
Absolutely.
having some participation. It was like when I was in Key Club or whatever it was that put me out in the community.
FBLA.
Right. Working with the school board could be a nice thing on a small school
Mhm.
resume to get into college or to do something else in their life. So anyway, I'm all for it. Either way we decide to do it. I
Okay.
think that introductory meeting would be great.
Okay, I'll gather some information and
So should we have then agreed to have like a work session where all these
Not
students are, not yet?
Not yet.
Well, I think
Let her
what
get
the goal would be is
information.
for Jamie to just, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
Well, and
interrupt.
I think one of the things too that you also guys have to remember is looking at this, and you can say their names because it is public record.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Is that they are all athletes. And so we might pick a night where they can't come, but I don't want to also have an opportunity if they want to come, but
Mhm.
they happen to have that. But Russ, what you're saying really is the start of an ASB, like a student government, which in order for us to have one, you really actually, and you can look at this in the policy, they have to make their bylaws.
Yeah.
And they have to start that process. So it's a great.
Right, but
start.
that's what I mean, like this year could be that
Just
beginning,
explain the
right? Like
violation.
that could be
Yeah,
the
right.
beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's early in the school year. And like you said, I guess you can pick up where they're at. Oh, it's probably the email that 25 means they
Yes.
graduate. Okay. What these kids, if they're spread out, could work on that end goal, which is, hey, by the end of the year, we would like you to achieve this. And then, one of us, two of us, I mean, a couple representatives could work with them to help them, figure it out. And, Krista can as well. But I mean, anyway, I think it's a great idea. I don't know how to do it all, but I think it's a great idea.
Moving on, there's no old business. Do we have any board comments this evening?
Yes, I had a note. In line with this thought, I was thinking the other day, we are a unique dynamic. I think I mentioned in the last board meeting about what our school community is versus just the LC community. And while we are all elected officials of our LC community, we also serve a community of Learn at Home Oregon that doesn't have the opportunity to have a seat at this table as well. So just idea of how do we involve them, and other than we get a principal's report from Ms. Shunk, but how do we involve making sure that our decision and policies are in line with how it may affect online as well as our brick and mortar students? So just a perspective to think about.
Anybody else? And does anyone have any future agenda items they would like to put on? This time we have some key dates: an open house on September 18th coming right up.
And the teacher workday is actually September 20th, not October 20th.
September 20th
There
is
you
teacher
go.
workday. October 11th is that half day with the teacher in service, is that correct?
No,
No.
that's a full day. That's so actually
Oh.
hearing screenings are September 17th. Teacher workday is September 20th and the teacher in service, and that's actually a statewide in service day. And we're gonna do PSYOP training with the teachers that day. So the teachers are all come in and we're gonna do a half day PSYOP training, and then Miss Shunk is gonna do a PLC with her, the elementary that day.
When you say PSYOP, is what I'm thinking of.
Sheltered
Okay,
instruction operation procedure. So it's really something for ELD learners, but we're teaching it as a whole because it's for all.
I was imagining psychological operations.
No,
Not our-
PSYSS.
Okay.
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 Is that, so the 20th is a Friday, that teacher workday?
September 20th, yes.
Yeah, September 20th. Like, do they have to work that day?
Yeah, we're actually doing a meeting. I'm teaching
Okay.
them how to, we're gonna go over how to write goals, their SLG goals.
Oh, okay. But you set that up, not the state, right?
No,
You s-
no, it's actually on the district.
Oh, okay, that's what I was wondering. Okay. All
All
right.
right, with that, we can adjourn this meeting at 19:46.
Are you running out of
He's
here?
actually looking at this book.
Are you running right away? Okay, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. Wait for it.
All right. I inherited this from my son.
Love it.
I know, it's kind of a nice little bag. He says, Mom, where'd you get that? I said, out of your old bedroom.
Did you say, don't worry about it?
I said, out of your old bedroom. He goes, I was looking for that.
Well, it was sitting in your old bedroom.
Like I cleaned out your old bedroom, there's nothing left in there. Thank you.
Oh.
We need to build us a nice executive boardroom. Cushy chairs,
Only one thing at a time.
rolling around.
We can start having them in that back room. Do they have cushy chairs in that hot box?
You know, that was part of the bond, remember? We were gonna have a nice boardroom.
No.
Yeah,
we got rid of
So
some.
many things.
More beneficial ways to spend it on the students.
Sometimes though, oh, that's old.
Oh, I feel you.
Oh,
I'm
geez.
glad you feel better. There's something going on.
Yeah, oh, I tell you, so I got off work on a Tuesday afternoon and I could feel that I was going downhill. And I went to the grocery store, got my groceries, got home, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? So I reached up and grabbed the thermometer, a 101.2.
Seriously?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my
And it's usually like only at 24 hours, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah,
And
I've had a
so-
lot of staff and kids be like,
And so I started on the Tylenol, ibuprofen, Tylenol, ibuprofen. I woke up in the morning, 101.4. I'm like, I'm not going to work today.
let me cough in your food.
Yeah. Here, have a little sweat.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah.
If I host a superintendent's meeting, like here in Alsea, could I get like cake?
Sorta. Are you doing it here at the school?
Yeah, like if I was like, hey, can we get like, can I have you just do club sandwiches and chips or something? That
Yes,
just like box lunches or
Yeah,
something? Okay.
yes, absolutely.
'Cause yeah, because every town, every district's supposed